I never imagined my life would collapse in silence. No screaming matches. No slammed doors. No dramatic confrontation where everything spills out and ends in tears. Just absence. My name is Eleanor Whitman. I'm 27 years old, and 6 months ago, the man I loved for nearly 5 years vanished from my life without a single word. At least, that's what I told myself in the beginning. I had been with Samuel Whitman since I was 22. We met the old-fashioned way, through mutual friends at a summer barbecue in upstate New York. He was quiet, polite, and observant in a way that made people underestimate him. I mistook that calm for predictability, for weakness. We moved in together after 3 years. A modest apartment with creaky hardwood floors and a kitchen window that caught the late afternoon sun just right. We built routines. Coffee on Sundays. Grocery shopping on Wednesdays. Movie nights that slowly turned into both of us scrolling on our phones in the same room. I used to tell myself that was what stability looked like. The day Samuel disappeared was unremarkable. I spent the afternoon at my mother's house, helping her reorganize old photo albums, laughing with my younger sister, pretending everything in my life was perfectly intact. When I returned to the apartment that evening, the first thing I noticed was the quiet. Not the comfortable quiet I was used to. The wrong kind. The kind that feels staged. The living room was clean. Too clean. Samuel wasn't messy, but he was human. There were no shoes by the door. No jacket draped over the chair. I called out his name, expecting him to answer from the bedroom or bathroom. Nothing. When I opened the bedroom closet, my stomach dropped. His side was empty. Not partially empty. Not messy or rushed. Empty, with intention. The dresser drawers were cleared. His watch box was gone. His cologne, the one I'd bought him 2 Christmases ago, gone. In the bathroom, his toothbrush was missing. He hadn't stormed out. He had erased himself. I called him immediately. Straight to voicemail. Texted him. No delivery confirmation. I checked every app. Instagram, Facebook, even LinkedIn in a moment of desperation. Blocked. Everywhere. I stood in the middle of our apartment, surrounded by furniture we'd chosen together, and realized something terrible. Samuel hadn't taken anything that required discussion. Only what was unquestionably his. The couch stayed. The dishes stayed. The rug we argued about stayed. He didn't want conflict. He wanted separation. That night, I didn't sleep. I paced. I called his phone over and over until my throat burned from sobbing. I convinced myself something bad had happened. That he was hurt. That he'd been in an accident. By morning, I knew better. Samuel was not reckless. He was deliberate. The next few days blurred together. I contacted friends. Mutual friends. Coworkers. Everyone acted confused. Concerned. Too concerned. People asked gentle questions that felt rehearsed. Did you two argue? Was everything okay lately? Is there something you haven't told us? I said no. I said everything was fine. That was my first lie. Because things hadn't been fine for a long time. Samuel had been working longer hours at his firm, yes. He was ambitious. Focused. But he still came home every night. Still asked about my day. Still noticed when I was quiet. What changed wasn't him. It was me. I felt unseen. Not ignored, unseen. As if my presence had become background noise in my own relationship. I stopped trying to articulate it because every time I did, I sounded ungrateful even to myself. Then Henry Caldwell started at my office. Henry had an old-school charm. Dark hair always neatly combed. Shirts with button cuffs even on casual Fridays. He listened, really listened, when I spoke in meetings. He laughed at my jokes. Asked follow-up questions. I told myself it was harmless. I told myself it was professional. Until it wasn't. One drink after work turned into several. Several turned into his apartment. I remember standing in his doorway, knowing exactly what crossing that threshold meant. And stepping inside anyway. I didn't think about Samuel when it happened. That's the part that shames me the most. I thought about myself. For 8 weeks, I lived 2 lives. The version of me Samuel came home to calm, affectionate, predictable. And the version of me who texted Henry during lunch breaks, who invented late meetings and girls' nights, who learned how to wash guilt off her skin in gym showers before coming home. I convinced myself it wasn't serious, that I deserved it, that Samuel would never know. What I didn't know was that Samuel had already begun to notice the changes. The phone I kept face down, the excuses that came too easily, the way I deflected when he asked questions. I accused him of being paranoid. "Don't you trust me?" I asked, watching guilt flicker across his face as he backed down. 3 days before he vanished, I left my email logged in on our shared laptop. Henry had sent details about a hotel reservation. Explicit. Careless. That was the moment I lost control of the narrative, even if I didn't realize it yet. While I was indulging in secrecy, Samuel was planning. Not revenge. An exit. The silence that followed his disappearance was unbearable. Not knowing where he was. Not being able to plead. To explain. To cry convincingly enough to earn forgiveness. I told myself he owed me a conversation. That belief sustained me and poisoned me for weeks. Because the truth was simpler. Samuel had seen everything, and he had chosen dignity over drama. By the time I realized that, my life had already begun unraveling. The first person who finally said it out loud was Margaret Hill. She had been my closest friend since college, the kind of friend who knew which mug I preferred, who could read my mood from the way I said hello. When she came over a week after Samuel disappeared, she didn't bring wine or sympathy. She brought caution. She sat on the edge of my couch, hands folded tightly in her lap, eyes scanning the apartment like she was cataloging evidence. "Eleanor," she said carefully, "is there anything you need to tell me?" My heart began to race. I felt it in my ears, loud and frantic. "What do you mean?" I asked, already defensive. She hesitated, then met my eyes. Something that might explain why Samuel left the way he did. In that moment I knew. Somehow, Samuel knew about Henry. But I refused to let the truth surface. "Nothing happened," I said quickly. "Things were fine between us. He just left." Margaret didn't argue. That silence was worse than accusation. Over the next few days, the questions multiplied. Friends called less frequently but more pointedly. Conversations shifted. People listened differently, like they were waiting for me to slip. Then the truth emerged in fragments. Samuel hadn't vanished impulsively. He had reached out privately to a few people. Not with anger. Not with cruelty. Just with proof. Screenshots. Hotel confirmations. Dates and times that aligned too neatly with my late meetings. He wasn't destroying me publicly. He was clarifying himself. And once people saw the truth, their concern for me evaporated. Margaret stopped texting altogether. Another friend sent a single message. "You let us worry about Samuel when you were the one cheating. That's unforgivable." Blocked. One by one, my support system collapsed. Not explosively, quietly. Invitations stopped coming. Messages went unanswered. When I walked into rooms, conversations stalled. At work, whispers followed me like static. Henry avoided me. That part hurt more than I expected. He started taking lunch at odd hours, left meetings early, responded to my texts with vague, delayed replies until eventually, not at all. When I finally cornered him in the break room, his expression was strained. "This situation is complicated," he said. "I didn't sign up for this." I stared at him, stunned. "You knew I was in a relationship." "Yes, but I didn't think it would explode like this." That was it. 8 weeks of secrecy, of stolen intimacy, reduced to inconvenience. I watched him walk away and realized the affair had never been about us. It had been about me. The worst part wasn't losing Henry. It was realizing I had destroyed my life for someone who didn't even want to deal with the aftermath. I began rewriting the story. I told anyone who would still listen that Samuel and I had already been drifting apart, that he was emotionally unavailable, that it was one mistake exaggerated into betrayal. Some people nodded politely. Those who truly knew Samuel didn't. My sister, Claire finally lost patience. "You're not upset because he left," she said one night over the phone. "You're upset because he didn't fight for you. He didn't beg. He didn't give you control." Her words landed harder than anything Samuel had ever said. And she was right. I had rehearsed apologies, tears, promises. I had expected drama. Instead, Samuel removed himself so completely that I was left alone with my guilt and no audience. That was unbearable. I needed to see him. Not to reconcile, I wasn't even sure I wanted that anymore, but to reclaim something. Closure. Power. Proof that I still mattered. 2 months after his disappearance, I found him by accident. A mutual acquaintance posted a photo on social media, a group shot at a newly opened coffee shop across town. In the background, barely noticeable unless you knew what to look for, was Samuel. He looked fine, healthy, focused, normal. While I had been unraveling, he had been living. Something inside me snapped. The next morning, I went to that coffee shop. I arrived early and waited across the street, heart pounding like a trapped animal. When Samuel appeared, walking calmly in his familiar wool coat, something twisted painfully in my chest. He ordered his coffee, smiled at the barista, sat by the window with his laptop. He had built a life without me. I walked in before I could change my mind. He noticed me only when I was standing directly in front of him. "Eleanor," he said evenly. No shock. No emotion. "You left," I said, my voice shaking. Without saying anything, he closed his laptop slowly. "Sit down. You're causing a scene. You don't get to decide that. You know why I left. You didn't even give me a chance to explain." "Explain what?" His composure cracked, just briefly. "How you lied to me for months." I reached for defenses I'd practiced endlessly. "You were always working. We weren't close anymore." "Stop," he said quietly. "I'm not here to listen to you rewrite our relationship to justify what you did. That hurt. Then why did you check on me through Margaret?" I demanded. "Why do you care?" "Because I'm not cruel," he replied. "But caring doesn't mean I owe you anything. I deserve closure." "You ended this," he said flatly. "I just finalized it." When I grabbed his arm, the barista intervened. Samuel gently removed my hand. "Don't come looking for me again," he said. "It's over." As he walked away, I realized something devastating. He wasn't angry. He was done. 6 months later, I lived alone in a smaller apartment, in a neighborhood I never would have chosen before. I had kept my job barely. The promotion I once expected went to someone else. Life moved forward, just not with me at the center anymore. When Claire told me Samuel was engaged, something inside me hollowed out. Engaged. 6 months after discovering my betrayal, I broke my promise to myself and looked him up. The photos were everywhere. Samuel with a woman named Beatrice. Smiling. Relaxed. Happy in a way he hadn't been with me in years. The comments were worse. "You deserve this happiness. So glad you found someone worthy of you." I drank too much wine that night and convinced myself I needed to see them. Just once. For closure. I told myself I was going to the engagement party for closure. That was the lie I repeated while getting dressed. That was the lie I used to justify buying a new dress, styling my hair, applying makeup with more care than I had in months. The truth was uglier. I wasn't ready to accept that Samuel had moved on so completely, not just from our relationship, but from the version of himself that had loved me. The invitation hadn't been meant for me. A mutual friend had accidentally included me in a group message while organizing the party. I saw the venue, the date, the time, and I fixated on it. The night of the party, I arrived late on purpose. A rooftop bar overlooking the city, glowing with warm lights and soft music. Laughter floated through the open space, effortless, unburdened laughter. The kind I hadn't known in months. I approached the hostess confidently. "Name?" she asked, scrolling through her tablet. "Eleanor Whitman," I said. Her smile faltered. She checked again. "I'm sorry, I don't see your name." Before I could respond, I heard my name spoken behind me. Sharp, urgent. "Eleanor." I turned to see Margaret, champagne glass in hand, confusion quickly hardening into alarm. "You shouldn't be here," she said quietly. "I was invited." I lied, gesturing vaguely at my phone. Her expression softened, but her voice didn't. "That message was sent to you by mistake." That's when I saw him. Samuel stood across the rooftop, dressed in a navy suit, one arm wrapped protectively around a woman in a white dress. Beatrice. She was even more composed in person, calm, grounded, secure. When Samuel's eyes met mine, his smile vanished instantly. Not fear. Not guilt. Recognition. Like someone spotting a storm cloud on the horizon. He shifted slightly, pulling Beatrice closer without thinking. That small, instinctive movement told me everything I needed to know about where I now stood in his life. Security approached. Margaret gently took my arm. "This isn't about you anymore," she said. "Please leave." I laughed, sharp, brittle. "Tell Samuel congratulations," I said loudly. "Tell him I hope she makes him happier than I ever did." Samuel didn't respond. He was already speaking softly to Beatrice, his body angled away from me. I was escorted out. In the elevator, surrounded by strangers pretending not to stare, something inside me finally cracked. I wasn't the wronged woman. I was the cautionary tale. Later that night, my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "This is Beatrice. We need to talk." My heart pounded. She had my number. She wanted to meet. The next day, I arrived early at a quiet riverside cafe. When Beatrice walked in, she looked nothing like the villain I had imagined. No smugness. No triumph. She sat across from me calmly. "Thank you for coming," she said. "Did Samuel send you?" I asked. "No," she replied. "He doesn't know I'm here." That unsettled me more than anger would have. "Why do you want to see me?" She considered her words carefully. "Because you're still present in his life, not physically, but emotionally. And I wanted to understand why." A flicker of satisfaction stirred in my chest. "So, I haunt him?" I asked. She shook her head. "No. You represent a chapter he closed decisively. But closure still leaves marks." She leaned forward slightly. "Why did you cheat on him?" No one had asked me that directly before. I stumbled through excuses. Distance. Neglect. Feeling invisible. She listened without interrupting. Then she asked, "In the moment, did you think it would be worth the risk?" I swallowed. I didn't think there would be consequences. "You thought he'd forgive you," she said gently. "Fight for you." I nodded. "That's what I needed to understand," she said quietly. "You never truly knew him." The words hurt because they were true. "Samuel doesn't negotiate trust," she continued. "Once it's broken, he leaves. Not to punish, to protect himself." "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. "Because you're still waiting for a different ending," she said. "And as long as you do, none of us fully move on." She stood, gathering her things. "We're happy," she added. "And I hope someday you're too. But you won't find it looking backward." After she left, I sat there for a long time. For the first time, I understood the truth I'd avoided since the beginning. There was never going to be a conversation that saved us. No apology powerful enough. No explanation convincing enough. The moment I betrayed Samuel's trust, the relationship ended. He had simply accepted it before I did. That realization didn't bring peace, but it brought clarity. I texted my sister. "Can I come over? I'm ready to talk. Really talk." Her reply came instantly. "Always." As I walked away from the cafe, I didn't look back. Samuel was gone. The life we planned was gone. The version of myself that blamed everyone else was gone too. All that remained was who I might become next, if I was finally honest enough to face myself. Maybe that was the only closure I was ever going to get. And maybe it was the only one I deserved.